Hello and welcome to another of the fantastic Festive Tech Calendar 2024 sessions. And by that I mean the Festive Tech Calendar is fantastic. I hope you'll find this fantastic as well. I'm Kevin McDonnell and I'm here to talk to you about agents. And just like when a James Bond film gets released, agents are everywhere now. But do you know what they actually are? Do you know the different ways they can help? Are you confused on how to get started? Do you think this is just another hype cycle? So, I'm planning to take you through some of the different options in the Microsoft space and give you a broad sense of what you can do. But most importantly, you'll see the different elements needed to build an agent that will help you decide what to use and how to govern it over time. So, my name's Kevin McDonnell. I've been working in this modern workplace, Microsoft era for around 20 ish more years now. Started off over in financial services and then moved over to consulting side about 9, 10 years ago. Microsoft MVP and Microsoft 365 with a focus on Copilot and Viva because I'm a Viva Explorer and it's definitely still alive. I promise. Don't ask me about that. And I'm also a podcast co-host, so I speak with Zoe Wilson. You'll see the background is from our podcast. We speak every couple of weeks ish on the latest in the Copilot technology and bringing people in. You can also find me, and there'll be a link in the show notes on the Copilot Fireside Chat, where I talk about all things Copilot. We have some amazing guests, including Vesa Juvonen next week, so really worth joining in for that. You can find me on the socials. Let's see, where am I down there? For these, I'm on Blue Sky. I am on X as well, but quieter and quieter these days, as well as LinkedIn, and you can find some of my stuff on GitHub. But this is not about me today. This is about what an agent is, what it can be. And I want you to think about what your strategy is for building agents. And I don't mean just an agent. How do you think about bringing these things together? Because you'll hear the word multi-agentic an awful lot. I'll show some of the options, I'll talk about them, and then show some of those things that you can do. And then we'll talk about how you can get started. And talking of getting started, let's kick off with what is an agent? So, an agent can be something that's autonomous or semi autonomous, so it will work on its own. One of the things I loved about the phrase copilot is it's a copilot. It sits there alongside you, where the agents are kind of starting to work without you, but they will use AI and probably more specifically and more often generative AI. We'll touch on that a bit later. And they're very powerful for enhancing your business processes. But those business processes, we may not be talking about this big, wide workflow system for your whole organization. They can work for you as an individual productivity or innovation tool. They can work with your team or broaden out to your department or be looking at that whole organization within there. So these agents, they're kind of almost atomic. They have specific roles within them that they can do. We'll talk about the spectrum of those in a minute, but they can also talk to each other with that power of AI. And I love this slide that Microsoft brought together when they did the, what was it, the Copilot Wave 2? I think they shared this one. And they talk in there about the retrieval. So you have an agent that will bring back information to help ground on it, summarize, answer questions from it. And that's much like you'll see with a lot of the and M365 Copilot, almost got it wrong there, that's generally available now. But then you've got these tasks, these actions that can take place as well. So it's not just about getting back information or working with that content and knowledge. It's about taking action, connecting up to other APIs, whether it's the kind of internal M365 graph ones, whether it's within Dynamics or whether it's beyond that to your own systems, to ServiceNow, Salesforce, all the different tools you're using. And then finally, it's that more autonomous. So a lot of these, they will work on their own, but they're triggered through chat. It's that bot world that we've seen for many, many moons. This is about making them autonomous and being triggered from other things. And you'll hear me talk about triggers an awful lot because to me, that's one of the big evolutions as to when these agents kick in as well. So let's talk about aligning the tools you need with these agents. Well, you could not use agents per se. You could go back to the world of Copilot, and you've got your M365 Copilot, your Copilot in Dynamics 365, whether it's customer service within there, your Copilot for service, for sales, in Power Automate, in Viva. You get the idea. There's a whole load of Copilots where Microsoft's looked at it and they've looked at this can help everyone, or this can help specific roles, or this can help specific scenarios, and they've kind of used their understanding to kind of make some copilots. And that's a great way to kind of get moving with this. From a technical perspective, for the most part, it's pay the license, switch them on, boom, you're done. There is a little bit of work, well, possibly quite a lot to work, depending on how you've governed your environment, to set up your digital core and make sure it's surfacing the right environment, the right information. I absolutely do not want to downplay that. That is a critical part to all of these, is to have that solid and understood and governed digital core. And you want to look at your adoption and change that you've got as you roll this out to build those habits. But it's that enabling. It's slightly less tech focused and building things from there, because on the technical side, a lot of it is going to be about turning it on and getting people going with it. But then you can extend, you can bring that Copilot you've bought and add more to it. You can scale out to more information. So with M365 Copilot, you could bring in your other systems knowledge. You could scope in and say, actually, when people ask for these sort of things, that's what I'm talking about. I want you to focus on this and behave in that way. You can extend that base capability and evolve it to where you and your organization sits. Or it could sit in that automation space to be triggered when you want these things to take place. And this is where you're looking at those business processes to helping reduce some of the impact of that manual work within there. Not to replace humans in the loop, but to augment them and make them more efficient. And then finally, over there, you've got those custom agents. So these are where they're standing alone. You're not building a Copilot. These are separate from everything else. And that could be through low code with Copilot Studio, or using things like Semantic Kernel, Teams AI. What's the other one thinking? AutoGen and others, or even just making use of other open AI. These can sit alone. These are the agents that maybe you've heard a lot about within there. And what do these things look like within that Microsoft space? Well, there's kind of different types of agents. You've got those ones I've talked about building, that AutoGen, that Copilot Studio down there, Semantic Kernel. I said Teams Toolkit. I probably should say Teams AI. Teams Toolkit is the way to deploy those custom agents. There's some coded technology, or that low code with Copilot Studio. But what we've seen really since Ignite and a little bit since the Copilot Wave 2 announcements are those agents that you can just use, that are there focused on the end user. You don't even need to be a power user to make use of these. Things like the Copilot agents as they get released, Copilot actions as they get released will allow people to manually say, like, when an email comes in, I want to do this with it. When something gets added to a list, I want to do this. There's kind of no coding knowledge using. You're using natural language. And yeah, I'm not going to die. There is a bit of understanding around prompts that people need to get. But that understanding they've had from using ChatGPT, from using Microsoft Copilot or M365 Copilot, that understanding we've been building about over the last year to 18 months, in fact, 2 years, if we're talking about ChatGPT, that understanding can be used with a lot of these, whether it's that Copilot actions, those SharePoint agents that I'll show later, that you can select some files and give some instructions and some guidance on it. Those BizChat agents that it will step you through in natural language to ask you what you want and help with that. Or again, those Copilots themselves. And Microsoft's made it even easier by building some agents that you can use, such as the facilitator agents that comes through, that will help kind of organize your meetings, have that conversations. Some of these features which you would have assumed were in M365 Copilot will now be kind of leveraged through this facilitator to be more specific around what it does. That project manager that can help with the nagging side of the projects. And I always find this a little hard, because I find that people shouldn't be looking at this and going, this is going to replace a project manager. This is replacing the day-to-day red tape that project managers have to go through to allow them to focus on the people element, to make sure they know what is happening, to be able to correct projects or to be able to keep them going at the right level within that. And you've also got that employee self-service agent, which will start to allow people to kind of look at their policies and take some of the more HR actions or the common actions. It could be IT oriented and IT service desk that they're native to organizations. And you've got down there the idea coach, which is really just a standard agent, but it's been given that instruction to help you think through your ideas. For years, and maybe this is less ideas, but solving things, it always bugged me that I'd be sitting looking at a problem and I'd stare into it, trying all these different things, couldn't figure it out. And finally went, right, I need to ask someone else. So I'm turning to someone next to me because it was back in the old days of being in the office. And I say, Dan, Dan, I've been trying to do this, but when I do this, this happens and I can't work out why. Oh, wait, I've just figured it out. And just that act of explaining that, no matter how many times I tried in my head, I couldn't do it. I have tried this a few times with the idea coach, and it's been like having someone next to you you can talk to, which is really, really powerful. Now, there is a fifth one. The Microsoft announced it ignites as one of their kind of M365 kind of native agents, out of the box agents. That's probably a better word for them. Um, but I didn't put it on here because then I would have had to think of a fifth one for all the others, or it would have looked messy. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to make it look pretty, but I would throw in there the interpreter agent, and I love this one. I will try and find a link and put it in the notes or in the comments for this for some of the videos, because with that interpreter agent, if I was speaking, well, sorry, I am speaking here in English, but maybe you're French or German or Chinese and you're listening to this and you want to hear it in your native language, the interpreter agent would take this video you see here and change what I'm saying, but use my voice. It will sound like me, but speaking in French or speaking in German or speaking in Chinese. And I can guarantee you, because I did 3 months of Chinese, in fact, of Mandarin when I lived in Singapore, and I really wasn't good at it. Whereas I think this will come through a lot more effectively. So very excited to see that when that lands, to give that a try as well. Anyway, on to the other one, on to the, saying which way I'm pointing, the third party agents over on the side there. With those, you got things like Salesforce Einstein, SAP's Joule, ServiceNow Virtual Agents, or the Workday Illuminate. So where other organizations have made some fantastic agents that work in the sphere and the services they're offering on that, you can actually bring those into the Microsoft space. You can bring those into Copilot. As Satya said a few times, Copilot is the UI for AI. And that's not just Microsoft's, that's not just your own, it's these third party ones as well. So you can bring that magic right into that same user experience on there as well. So if you're having that debate, should I go Einstein? Should I go ServiceNow's virtual agent? Should I bring Workday into this? Actually, you can bring all those into Copilot if you can afford it. So let's have a look at some of the different options and what people are saying about this. I mentioned earlier you might be in that hype cycle space for it. And I love how Gartner has their hype cycle. And they've been looking at this for 2024, released, I think it was a few weeks back now, this hype cycle for generative AI. And you can see that it starts within that kind of innovation trigger, that bit that kind of gets people excited, gets people thinking about these things, and it hits that peak. You've probably thought about that peak. If we look at OpenAI at the moment, it's doing 12 days, I think, of Christmas and doing announcement. This excitement is up there. Then the reality starts to hit. People try it out. Some of these things maybe don't work quite as well as they'd like to. And it starts to sink down towards that trough of disillusionment on there. And then as people realize things out, it hits that plateau of productivity where the reality of it combined with the value it brings starts to give you that peak. And you'll see, was it just up there? Sometimes you will see things be obsolete before that plateau. You will see some things, if we look at, what's there, artificial general intelligence that's been talked about for more than 10 years, if you use this key up there, there's still a lot of work to do around that. What is interesting, oh gosh, I'd never be a weather forecaster, is that you'll see approaching that trough of disillusionment are Gen AI enabled virtual assistants. You could say these are agents. I can see over there is autonomous agents and other ones on there, but these Gen AI virtual assistants, which is really what a lot of the agents are starting to head down. And you might think, why are you telling me all about agents and then saying that they're hitting that trough of disillusionment? Well, the reality is, if things are done properly, it will come out that trough. Now is your time. Now is is your time to understand why they're getting down towards the bottom. What are the challenges? But also, what are the positives? What are the things that's going to help you make it rise back up to bring it higher and higher to where you need to go? Now is your opportunity to get the reality from this and get it moving from there as well. So, what are the considerations for an agent? What are the things that you've talked about? I've talked a little bit about those triggers that are there up the top. No, they're there up the top. I've got to work out which way I'm facing. Those there up the top of there, those triggers, because when you're thinking about Copilot, when you're thinking about the world of bots, your trigger was simple. It was the user typing something that would trigger things off. But in this world of autonomous agents, it could be other things taking place. It can be event driven for there. So when you're considering an agent, how is it that it's going to get triggered from there? You then need to think about those creators. Who are those people going to make it? You need to think about how, when it's there, how are humans in the loop for that? And I'm going to dig into these a little bit further as I go through. You need to think about those generative capabilities. These are generative AI agents for the most part. But do they need to be? What is the point of that? You need to think about how they're going to work in an autonomous system, what makes sense from that. And most importantly, there we go, I'm pointing the right way first time, get in there. Most importantly, think about how you're going to scale this. And when I talk about the scale, what I mean is, how are you going to get this working with more users? So that traditional scale, is it going to have the right resources? But also, as you bring more and more of these agents, are people going to be able to cope with it? Will they work well together? Will they work with what people are doing in there as well? If I think about when plugins came into what was Copilot for M365 at the time, if you had 20 or 30 plugins, you had this massive list to find through. And so it didn't scale well because trying to work out which was really quite hard. So this is what I'm talking about thinking that experience for users as you scale as well. So let's talk about some of those creators. So there's different kind of solutions, and I touched on this earlier, that those end users, we kind of had the power users before, the specialists. They were there in terms of you can kind of C sharp developers, Python developers, JavaScript and TypeScript would create things, and your power users in Copilot Studio would be positioned to create things. But now with generative AI, you're getting more and more agents that can be created themselves. So things like the SharePoint agents, Copilot actions. Now, the reality of the end user, if I don't want to say they're just end user, that's the wrong word, but if they're in that capability where they're not going to go over to the others, whether they can or not, the point is they're not going to often have the same level of technical expertise. And their idea of governing those, so like, I want to get what I want right now. Generally for me, might be for my team, but I'm just worried about that. I'm not thinking about that governance. I'm not thinking about who's going to support it within there. So these are really powerful tools, but you need to make sure how are you, as someone managing this, going to help them understand the governance and help do some of that work for them in reality. Now, as we come over towards the kind of power user side, there they've got a bit more experience with environments and elements like that. There is a starting to be that understanding within there, and specialists should, I'm going to say should, have that knowledge of the application lifecycle process. So they should be more geared to it. So those people that create it will impact how you manage and govern these solutions, as well as how you skill them up from there as well. Now let's move on to having a look at the humans in the loop as well. And responsible AI is such an important thing within there, and it's being rightly talked about an awful lot. But when you're creating an agent, how do you how do you know you're doing a responsible AI? Do you give someone a checklist and say, when you do this, you are not being responsible. If you create an agent that goes and harvests all the web, then you should be make sure you're using. Yeah, yeah, okay, yes, there are elements you should do on that. But I want to take it a little bit simpler. If we're talking about those end users from the last side, how do we make it easier for end users? And the first one, damn it, no, that way. The first one is the sniff test. Does it smell like a good idea? Is what I'm doing with this autonomous agent or this standalone agent that's going to sit there? Does it feel a bit wrong? Is there something about it that just doesn't feel right? And taking that a little bit further, if I was to go out there and this story about the agent I created went to the newspaper, especially one of the kind of red tops in the UK, the tabloid newspapers, if they heard about this, could they twist this story and make it sound awful? What if this came out? Would everyone be nervous if it was kind of analyzing and let's say checking my contents to see if I might be too religious for the organization? Oh, that really, well, it doesn't smell nice. That it doesn't pass a sniff test for a start. But if you found your large organization, came out to the press and they saw that, then your reputation would be in tatters and you'd have a huge risk within there as well. So thinking about what if other people knew about this, especially newspapers. Next one is a Copilot test, and this isn't really testing things with Copilot. It's not a stupid idea. You can test ideas by asking those generative AI. What I'm talking about here is I mentioned earlier, I love that name, a Copilot, because it's there by your side helping you. Is this agent you're creating there by your side helping you? Or is it going off on its own, doing things you wouldn't have expected within there? Have you got the control of it? And that to me is the co-pilot test. Does it feel like someone there with you or someone going off doing the things that you should be doing or your department should be doing? Does it have that human in the loop effectively that it's working alongside with them? And finally, and I was going to say probably, but definitely most importantly, is that actual compliance test. Are you is there any laws that you need to follow? For example, there's the EU AI Act. Are you looking at how that is, and does that apply to your agent? And I know many organisations are kind of struggling to work out how best to take that on, and there's plenty of consultancies out there having discussions about this. But make sure that you understand, things like GDPR. If you're in specific industries, certainly looking at financial services and pharmaceuticals, are there particular compliance things that mean you can't do what you're planning to do with your agent? So make sure that you are getting your legal and compliance obligations taken into this as well. That is still important. That's important whatever you're building. But I would say in this AI world, it is very easy to kind of go over those best practices because it feels a bit cool and trendy. So just watch out for those ones. Moving on to the generative capabilities. One of the key things about AI is, hold it, take a breath. You don't always need AI. I know, I know that's an outrageous thing for me to say, but it's true. A lot of the things you're doing don't need to bring AI into the story. So just think about, can you do it with regex? Could you use regular expressions to create what you wanted? Could it be just a simple if or switch statement and a bit of code that sort of says, if it's this, do that, if it's this, do that? Do you genuinely need, are the benefits of AI, the value of paying for that extra usage worth it for what you're going to get out? And by the same token, are you using the right level of model? Are you going, I really want 4OI. I want that reasoning engine. Why? Because it's the latest and coolest, and I read about it yesterday. Actually, I saw a lovely demo that Scott Hanselman did at the Scottish Summit. And in it, I noticed he was using GPT 3.5 as his model. And I asked him afterwards, why was that? It was like, well, why would I use more than that for the demo I was doing? That's all I needed. So that's all I needed to show. Why should I waste that extra energy that's gone into using the larger models when I don't need that? And that really stuck with me as well. And it could be you could use things like predictive AI instead of the generative AI as well, the more traditional machine learning style. So think about what's the cost, what's the risk of doing this. Which kind of brings me on to the next one, thinking about risks, especially when you're looking at that autonomous world of things. What are the boundaries? When you're having this thing be autonomous, where does it stop? Whatever you do, Kev, don't mention Terminator. Don't mention. Oh, done it. Mention Terminator again. But it is that thinking. It's like how can we say I know it won't go too far? Two things. Where are my boundaries, and have I defined those to my agent well enough? And this isn't about it going out of control and taking over the world. It could be if you're generating an email, maybe it generates and sends it, and you hadn't planned for that. So making sure you're putting in those right restrictions to keep it in bound to what it is. And there will be times it doesn't quite know what to do. It doesn't it doesn't quite get what you're trying to get it to do. So how will it handle that uncertainty on there? So thinking about those things, have you given it the right prompts? This is where true prompt engineers come in. Have you given it that right definition that it has all the information it needs? Or more importantly, if it can't, does it tell the end user that, or even log it to you? Or does it just make something up for perhaps hallucinate on there? So that's one of those things to think about as well. And finally, what if it does something wrong? What if it misses something? So your autonomous agent, maybe it's processing emails and it misses one coming in. I saw some lovely examples of it scanning emails for opportunities for a business. What if it misses an opportunity that's in there? What's the impact of that? Do you need humans to kind of validate? And if it kind of picks ones that aren't being processed and kind of checks on those, think about those different elements as well. And then the final consideration from the ones I talked about before about scaling the agent story. So, yes, put your Azure resources, build your components, work out how many people can use it, all those things. But also think about how you're going to bring these things together and how you're going to scale, what will probably be initially a kind of reduced number of people that you have who can build these agents. So you'll have that standard agent, things like the SharePoint agent, is relatively easy. But then if you go out to those kind of Copilot Studio, people who are trained in that or have that experience, there's a smaller number. So think about how they can do things like those connectors and plugins that can be used by other people. If we take on that wider ones of those really kind of specialist agents who think about how they can create connectors and plugins, how those specialist data scientists that are down there, they can kind of build what they need to do that can then be used by those power users. And what the power user creating can then be used by more people as well. So they're using an agent and building that simplicity. Because those three personas I talked about, they don't just have to build an agent in isolation. They can build components for an agent, and you can bring your specialization, that really, yeah, I'm going to say it, techie, geeky folks to build that really cool stuff that can then be used by other people within other agents. So you can take it beyond there. You can build your graph connectors to bring your ServiceNow data in, and you can have someone more technical to do that. But once you've got it in the system, those power users can make use of those connectors how they want to. So think about how you build those modules, those key ones that can then be reused across different agents. As I said at the start, don't just think of that single agent. Think about what your story is on that wider perspective as well. And that neatly takes me on to some of the other things to think about. Now, I'm not going to dig into this too much because my fantastic friend and colleague Simon Owen is doing some awesome work talking about this. But think about your center of excellence and your center for enablement. Your center of excellence are the people, those specialists, those people are building, who's managing and governing all your different agents. If you think, if you've come from the Power Platform world, looking at this, there's a Power Platform COE. That's all about governing that world. The center of enablement is how you tell people about what the agents, what they can use are, how you tell those end users and power users and even specialists how they can go and build things, your accelerators. It's where you celebrate huge success within there that sits within that. But as I say, go and check out Simon Owen's blog. If you just look it up, and I should remember what it is, I will try and remember to put that in the notes, but certainly look up Simon Owen Power Platform. It's got a fantastic blog within there, and he talks about these things an awful lot within there. And this is how you can enable more and more within your organization to take place. Okay, having gone way up and talked about strategy and those kind of connecting different things, I want to bring it down and look at some specific agents. And the first thing to do with that is talk about the anatomy of an agent. Now, one day I will get around to kind of animating this in a way that actually I quite like, because right now it kind of works, but I'd love to build this up. So when you're looking at this and you're only half listening to me because you're reading this, start in that middle bit, that kind of bit down there in red, and those agent building blocks. Because the first thing you need to think about, well, actually, you could. I'm going to start down the bottom this time. I usually start at the top. I'm going to go the other way around for a change. That foundational model. If you're using Copilot Studio, you're using that Copilot model, that GPT 4.0, I think it is primarily, but I do believe they use different elements as it is then. It's that LLM that's there. And then above that, you can see on the left hand side that orchestrator. That's the thing that takes that prompt that's being sent and works out what it needs to do. Does it need to go and get some knowledge? Does it need to summarize things? Where's it going to go get information? In fact, if we go up a level to look at that knowledge, there's all your information, which if we're looking at Copilot, is all your stuff in M365, your SharePoint content, your mails, your Teams messages. It will use that all as the knowledge within there to get stuff. But if we look over to the new agent approach, then you can start to connect to other places as well. We'll come to that in one sec. You've got actions, those tasks that take place. And if we're looking at M365 Copilot, then you haven't at the moment got any actions that take place. But you do have triggers. You have those things which primarily is typing into M365 Copilot set things off. Yes, there is there, and hopefully it's hitting 10 soon. I haven't checked, but scheduled prompts should be available within there as well. And then finally, you've got those workflow instructions. And again, for M365 Copilot, there's some instructions defined behind the scenes, but you as a kind of creator can't touch that. That is basically the prompt. So you need to guide users on those things of what they need to put in there. And yes, there's the out of the box ones. You've got the what was Copilot Lab, and it's got a nice, sexy new name that I've completely forgotten now. But you can guide people on those prompts. That sticks that. If we go over to the other side over there, this agent based approach, starting from the top, you can input those workflow instructions. So you can guide the tone you want for your agent. You can say what you want it to do, what you don't want it to do. You can define those different behaviors. You can add additional triggers from event based, and you can have them scheduled as well as triggered by chat, a certain action taking place from another system. You can build in webhooks, all sorts of cool stuff with that. You can bring in those actions from other APIs and third parties. You can bring knowledge using graph connectors from other systems as well and your own content. You can even build your own orchestrator for that. Obviously, make use of the M365 one if you're paying for it and it makes sense, but you could bring other things that work out that logic. And you can start to bring in your own models or other models that exist out there, such as the Claude ones. You could even look at some of the small language models, such as 5.3 or newly announced 5.4 on there. Gosh, that's harder to say than I realized. So you can start to build up this anatomy for what you want. Now, I think it's time for some demos. Okay, for those of you who are fans of my podcasts with Zoe Wilson and don't watch on YouTube, good news. Now is the time where you're going to stop seeing my face for a little bit. So I'm going to flip over and let's take a look at some of the content here. There we go. So I'm going to start off with the SharePoint agents on here. And from this, you can see that I'm here on a site called ESPC23. So ESPC, formerly the SharePoint, European SharePoint Conference, provides some awesome content from there. And here I've got a load of documents and I can select those and yeah. Okay. So if you do this and you suddenly see create agents not there, you've made a little mistake, as I did while I was demoing this, practicing this, but I thought I'd show you because I'm here on the home page. I actually need to go into the documents itself. It doesn't give me the option, but now if I go into there, I can select a few of those documents and I can click on here, create an agent, which is fantastic. And so I can go in and edit that. I'm actually not going to use that one now. I'm going to close that anyway, because you'll see that I've created an agent here called the ESP23 agent. Now, these are created as agent files. So if you call them agent, as I did, you get an agent.agent. Well, you'll have to live with that. If I click on this, what you'll see is this actually opens in file preview. So you can see I can actually navigate. Maybe a mistake because my machine seems to be running slow. But yeah, I can navigate through these files. There is a PDF just to prove that I have some of these there. There is the ESPC23 with the back of Jeff Teeper's head. Can go back here as an agent. So it is just a file and it renders here like that. And I can ask it questions. In this case, I selected all the different files. So which sessions talked about governance, a very important topic in this day and age where we want to sort out our digital core. So it's combing through that ones. Every time I do this, it gives me a different result. So it's now I see this. This is working for what I wanted slightly. Gosh, it's bringing back 5. Last time it only brought back 2. But you can see it's brought back Teams governance options, enforcing governance and compliance. Just try and see. You can kind of see here, protect and govern your sensitive data with Purview on there. And it's nice. I can see this first one. I can hover over and see the link to that. This was by Vlad. Now, interesting, it doesn't tell me who those for. Show me a list of those sessions with who presented them. So I can start to ask questions of this data based on what I've asked before, but with a little bit more information. So it's kind of retains, hopefully, the same 5 ones. Okay, let's see if number 2, who presented the navigating the AI era session? Let's see if it can work that out just out of interest. Otherwise, I will just have to. Here we go. It was presented. Oh, there we go, by Daniel and Ruja. I'm sorry if I've butchered your name there. But it managed to pick up the information. So you get the feeling. You can see that I can ask questions of that document, of those documents. So I could see, I could ask questions such as, what are graph connectors? I'm doing this off the top of my head, which is always slightly dangerous from there. But here you can see from what are graph connectors, it will go and answer a question based on, I hope, a specific session. Why did I pick graph connectors? Because that was my session at ESPC. So I know it should be able to return that information into there. Let's see, it's got one reference. Let's see if it did pick up. Yeah, taking your Microsoft search beyond M365. So it has answered that question based on the content of my presentation, which is all held in a PDF. Now that's really useful. I can go and share that with other people. I can copy that and give people access to that one so they can. I can also publish it. I can't here for reasons. I stupidly picked a not a team site, a communication site within there. So, but I could publish this out to other people. And really excitingly, in the last week or so, they've also announced, because right now this is only available for M365 Copilot license users. Soon you'll be able to use pay as you go. So you could build this content. Say you work for a retail store. You could build this content and make that available for all your retail staff, and you would get charged just as they use it. Where they don't have that Copilot license, they would just see that pay as you go license come through. So, really strong way of doing that. So, one other thing I love with this is if I edit it, and I can, change the name, I can change that icon and the description, I can add different sources, I can change the behavior and those starter prompts. So I've got a decent amount of control, but I haven't got everything. I can actually click here and add advanced one. So I can go from that end user basic. Within a few lines, I can create a basic agent, but I can take it further and connect as a power user into Copilot Studio as well. Having said that, I'm not going to do that right now. I am going to jump over and show you a different custom agent in Copilot Studio. And let's make that a little larger. Hopefully it's nice and easy to read for you. This is an elf agent, and its name is Elf Agent. I probably should have found a nice picture for this. I didn't think about that. I've given it a description, and this description is just a human power one to help me find it. Here I've given instructions. So I've said you are a Christmas agent that helps the user to pick a great Christmas present for someone and add it to a SharePoint list. So I've enabled that generative AI capability. I've added some knowledge, and I've actually picked a couple of sites here. So if I click on add knowledge, you can see I can add public websites, I can add SharePoint content. It's also preview of Dataverse. I can upload files of up to 512 meg. And under advanced, I can do some really cool stuff. So again, talking about that modular build up, I could have a data scientist use Azure AI search and build up really complex content, or the same with Fabric, and I can use the outputs from that as connectors. I can build graph connectors with Custom Now, or I could just use Salesforce, ServiceNow, or Zendesk, and there's a wizard to build those connectors up that are nice and easy. And in fact, I'll show you the DevOps version of that in a minute. So it's very easy to bring this knowledge in. I've picked Glamour Magazine, which is a magazine for ladies in the UK. If any of you are thinking that's anything dodgy, Moraine Summers, if you're watching, yes, I'm thinking of you. No, this is not a dodgy one. It's just got some lovely Christmas gifts, and and also Argos. It's a UK catalog company. It's got some great Christmas gifts in there. And having said that, if I just go and add a bit of knowledge, you'll see that I can put a link in there, but you need to confirm that your organization owns that content. Which I will be honest, I don't own for that Argos side. So I'm not really following those responsible AI principles, but it's a demo for you. This is never going to go into production. So I hope everyone is good with that. But you shouldn't be doing things like this. Naughty, naughty. Naughty elf, yes, you'll go off Santa's list. But I can ask questions like, what should I buy as a present for my wife? And every time I do this, it comes out with slightly different answers. So let's see what it's doing today. Now, as I ask that question, it's picking into the activity map. So it's taking me on a journey as to how it's processing that. So it's starting that session, it's starting to look through those knowledge sources, it's founding things in Argos, and it's found some jewelry, some gourmet food, some tea, Christmas homewares, candles, home fragrance, cookware. Yeah, it's very stereotypical. Now, I've just said wife. I haven't said what sort of thing she likes, which I really should do within there, but I don't want to give away the presents I've got for her. So let's say in there jewelry. Oh gosh, I can't spell. Jewelry is a good idea. can you give me some specific items? So this time I really want to get something back. Argos has on their site various things on there, so you can explore the jewelry section. Right, give me three specific items. Come on, you're going to take me through this. I want you to actually give me something on there. There we go. Okay, so it's brought up here a faux leather lockable two drawer jewelry box, jewelry pieces from the fabulous collection. Okay, we'll do that jewelry box. That's a nice one. If I hover over there, we should be able to see the link, and it links to a specific item, which is fantastic. Next thing I want to do is to add it to a list. Now, I've got over here, let's again zoom that a bit. I've created a SharePoint site called Christmas List, and I've added one with title and who it's for, and I've left one in there already. And how have I got it in there? Well, I've added an action, and you can see I'm just going to show you some of the other actions you can add within there. I can add things with Excel. I could get weather forecast, but all sorts of Dataverse and others. But the one I chose was to create a flow. And so if you've created a Power Automate flow, or you can create a Power Automate flow, and that's what I did, then you've got that Power Platform expertise that you can make use of, and it just gets triggered within here. So this flow will run and add things. But to do that, you need to tell it what information it needs. So I've got two parameters that are in that Power Automate flow. Let's have a look at those inputs. One is the title. That's the name of the object. And I've asked the agent, I can either set a specific value, or I can get it to fill with the best option. And if I do fill with the best option, how do I identify it? So it could be from a multiple choice. So based on what I've said, it could try and fit what I've said into a multiple choice set. Or I could say it's a particular item. I could get it to match on a date within this. You can help kind of nudge it towards the right sort of format. It could be an organization. But I've just kept it vague and said use the user's entire response. Now, if I expand on this, you can see here that I can say, how do you want to ask the user? So can you help me understand exactly what the present is? So this is if I need to confirm. Let me show you what I mean by that. So add this to my Christmas list. Sorry, add the jewelry box to my Christmas list. So I've basically wanted to take just that first one within there. And you can see it's called that add to Christmas list, but I haven't said who it's for. Now, the pedantic among you may go, I was looking for a present for my wife. Shouldn't it have inferred that? Yeah, well, well, maybe, but you're just being pedantic now. So tough. My wife. So it can't be clear. It hasn't managed to identify that within there, but it's been very clear what it's asked for. So very easily, I can see that it needs. I've got a set of fields that I need to fill out, and I can get it to help me fill the rest of the ones out in there. And if I go and refresh this list just to prove it's not all smoke and mirrors, there it is. It's added that, and it's added it as my wife within there. So you can see the power from this agent, and I can publish this out. I can publish this in Teams. I can publish this onto a website. I can even have it via telephony. So this could be a voice bot that comes within there as well. So lots of different options. You can even go into your customer service within that. So very powerful use of Copilot Studio. But this will be a custom agent. If we go back to those four blocks of enable, extend, automate, and custom, we're looking at a custom agent for this one. If I wanted to create one for M365 Copilot, I actually have to create a different type within there. So I have to create a specific agent. And I just realized I forgot to open the actual agent. So I created another version of this called the Jolly Elf. And the reason I'm doing this and repeating this is because I wanted to show the difference. So I've given a bit of a longer description. I actually, when you create this, it kind of guides you through very easily how to create this. Which, in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you, but message me and I'm happy to give more. It's got the instructions and the different things on there. I can add some knowledge, and if I click on that, you see there's something interesting here. Because it's M365 Copilot agent, I've only got SharePoint as an option. I haven't got public sites. I haven't got Dataverse. Now I can bring in some of those data connections. So I can bring in my graph connectors, those other Salesforce connectors, but you'll see it's not the same level of items that I can actually add and use for additional knowledge. And also, if I want to add an action, let's just see if it has fixed. No, of course it hasn't. I've got an issue with that at the moment. I believe that may be my tenant. So I'd love to hear from you if you've got the same access where you get that issue. I have raised the support ticket, but I haven't had a chance to sit down with a support person to get some understanding of that. But you should, in theory, be able to add those same actions onto that as well. But it's a slightly cut down version that you can do with this and a cut down capability as well. So at the moment, I haven't added that specific knowledge. I've just asked it to be an elf and make some recommendations. And then when I publish that, there are a few extra steps in terms of approval. You need to go into the M365 Admin Center and approve items there. And I've also found sometimes you need to go into the Teams Admin Center and approve something there. And I found sometimes it just is really moody and you have to kind of wait 6 hours and come back later. So just a little warning when you're publishing these. Patience is very much a virtue. Not fantastic when you're trying this out a couple of days before you're due to go and speak at a big conference, but well, there we go. That's part of the fun of it. Let's go and have a look and see what that agentic world looks like. So we can see here I'm in Copilot for M365. Again, let me make that a little bit larger. We're not quite that big. We're not that blind yet. Hi, Jeff, if you're watching. Yes, it has picked up. He wants to know what the latest from Scottish Summit is. But also up here, I've now got a set of agents, including Viva Goals. I'm going to miss Viva Goals. Another story on that one. But I can see various agents that I can go and chat to. And if I go and click on those, it will take me specifically into those agents and give me some options from that as well. But you can also, from this main window, actually talk to the agent. So I can talk about to the McDevOps agent. And this is another Copilot Studio one that I've created. But this time I've pointed it at my DevOps tenant, my Azure DevOps. And if I have a look in is it the backlog one to the boards? I always get the view the wrong way around. Let's see if it's the boards. Come on, boy. No, it was the backlog. I knew it was going to be the case. So I've created a feature called 2024, and I've called an epic for my wife, the eldest son, middle one. I got bored and didn't add the youngest on there. And under each of these, I've kind of created a user story for each of the types of thing that they want within there. Do I recommend you doing your shopping this way? No, that would be very, very weird, but it is possible. So, think about that as well. Now, if I go back to my agents, what stories do I have in my Christmas project? And let's see, hopefully it should bring back, I think I phrased that right. Hey, Kevin, I couldn't find any specific stories. What user stories do I have? What did I call that? In my Christmas planning team. My Christmas planning team. I'm just going to go back and see. Yeah, I did Christmas planning. Come on, let's do that. Right. Now, one of the interesting things you can see from this is what plugins are calling, but it's not showing me that information. List these stories from my Christmas planning projects. Third time lucky. Before I pause and go remember what query I asked before. Oh, you're just winding me up now. Right. Now, thankfully, because I did this yesterday, I can see what I asked it then that did work. So let's go back and not try and give away too much of this demo. What user stories are there about Christmas? Okay, I do want to run this again from scratch, so we'll try that. Uh, Now, I noticed maybe it was because I came off the DevOps agent. So let's chat that again. I think that was the problem. Let me just go up and have a look. Yes, I forgot to select the DevOps agent. So if you are stupid with this, it does stupid things. There we go. Fantastic. So now, because I'm chatting with that DevOps agent, it's brought back these items. You can see it's told me the state. It's currently unassigned and it's in the new state. And I can hover and link back to those items, which is fantastic. But what if I want to get some ideas? You'll notice one of the other agents that's up there is the agent coach, sorry, the idea coach. So let's say at idea coach, um, can you suggest some presents for the items above? Let's see. I don't know if I phrased that well. Let's try again and give that a go. So here we go. Absolutely, Kevin. So this idea coach is there to kind of help me with ideas, and it's found some ideas. So for Warhammer, it said consider getting a Warhammer model kit, some painting supplies, jewelry, a beautiful necklace, or a pair of earrings. You could also consider a personalized piece with their initials or birthstone. No, I would get in trouble. My wife doesn't like her birthstone. So I know a bit more than an agent, thankfully. I'm still good there, but that's pretty good. Now let's try the same thing, but this time with the Jolly Elf. So I've added the Jolly Elf agent in there. Can you suggest some projects for the items above? Now, the observant of you will go, projects, Kev, did you mean presents? Yes, yes, I did. Can you suggest some presents for the items above? Let's see what that came up with. So there's no reason. These are both using the LLM to suggest ones. They're not going out and getting things from there. Okay, this didn't come up quite as nicely as it did yesterday. So I'm going to cheat and go back and show you the one from yesterday. The reason is yesterday it gave me slightly different results. So here, when I asked this top one, I got the user stories, and I asked the idea coach to give some ideas, and it said, absolutely, Kevin. And then when I asked the Jolly Elf, it said, oh, absolutely, Kevin. Here are some delightful suggestions for presents that fit the stories we talked about. Now, the reason this is different is because I have different instructions for those agents, so they react in a different way. And in fact, in this case, it offered different ideas and put it in a different format. And this is where that power of the multi-agentic view really comes in, because you can look at that different ways of doing it. But you can also bring in some different activities within there as well. So let's again, given those, let's bring in the visual creator. So whereas before I had personalities as agents using the large language model, with the visual creator, it has different capabilities. So can you draw a Christmas scene, oh God, scene containing these items? So now, again, it's going to keep that flow of things. It's going to keep that flow from taking the items that I had from my list, suggesting presents from it, suggesting in a different way as the Jolly Elf and slightly different presents. And then finally, using a different agent, I'm going to generate a picture from those. No, I'm not. Let me try that again. And let me just jump back while that's running and see if what I had yesterday can do that. Never do demos when you're recording on a Saturday. It's always a bad, silly idea. Let's see if those images loaded back up. So here yesterday, where I asked exactly the same thing and it worked nicely, I got a set of these pictures, and that visual creator has taken that festive Christmas scene. It's taken the different presents that Jolly Elf recommended. So a set of paints and brushes and jewelry. Let me see if I can make those slightly larger. I don't know why they've suddenly gone so small, but you can see it's telling me that prompt that's available, and hopefully you can see there that it's generated different options for those images. I did notice when I looked through this one, there isn't much jewelry in there, so my wife may be a little bit disappointed, but it has pulled together those different items you can see there into an image. And it shows how you can bring this flow with different agents, with different focuses to give that output that you want to get together from as well. Okay, seeing that my demo's misbehaving, I'm going to jump back to the slides now and finish things off as well. Right, let's skip through that recording because, well, maybe I should have gone back to that recording because that looked a lot better. But anyway, I hope that gave you a good feel for it as well. But I want to give you now some tips to get started. First one, get hands on, get playing with it. You saw, I hope, that actually it wasn't too hard to get started. And if you want to get started with those custom agents, go into your Power Platform world, create a new a trial environment, and you can go and spin up your Copilot Studio without any cost. And yes, that will only last for a little while. Export those solutions and start another one. So if you're just playing around with this idea, you just want to get a feel for it, use that dev capability to do it and start trying these things out. Or even have a look at the Teams toolkit. You can get a lot of that same functionality that can be deployed using code and try those things. Especially if you look at the Teams AI, you can build that. Now there is a slight cost because you'll have to pay for OpenAI one, Azure OpenAI usage, but generally it works as well. And you can also deploy your agents into M365 from that as well. So give the Teams Toolkit and Copilot Studio and just try it out. Follow the guides, look through some of the pieces on there, and then listen to what others are doing. On the next screen, I've got some resources coming up, but things like some of the podcasts. So Jeremy Fake and his team over at Microsoft are coming in and talking about a lot of these things within there. We've got people like Waldek Mastercats, from Gary Trinder as the dev advocates, and Vesa Juvonen as part of the engineering team, who are putting out content out there, as well as Dewey Robinson from Microsoft, who's got a huge amount on his YouTube channel. Plus, you can listen to us at Copilot Connection as well. And then finally, check out the Microsoft content. In fact, I'm going to jump over to that slide and the content. If I was here in real life, if this was an in-person one, I'd say get your phones out now, but feel free to pause here and grab some of those links from there. So checking out Copilot Studio and the Teams Toolkit. Jeremy Fake and team actually have a podcast called the M365 Dev. So they're talking about mostly about the kind of code first, that pro code solution to things, but they also talk about why it's a benefit to use those over the Copilot Studio view. There's some content on learn.microsoft.com/copilot. I just realized I haven't put the actual link there. That's got some really great links to all the best places to go. So learn.microsoft.com/copilot will help get you to where you need to go. Dewey Robinson's YouTube channel there is fantastic. If you want to listen or watch, go to copilotconnection.com. It'll take you to all the podcast links or YouTube channels where we talk. And Zoe and I also speak on the Copilot Fireside Chat. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got Vesa Juvonen coming up. So be there, because if you're not there, it's not recorded. That is your chance to ask those questions. One of the things that sadly I couldn't do this week, I was meant to be at Experts Live UK, but family matters got in the way, and I was going to run the Season of AI Season 2, and there's some great hands-on demos there. So that community content has got guides on how to run demos and actually takes you through what you need to do, and in real detail. So worth having a look at that. And then finally, developer.microsoft.com/copilot. You can put your region in, but it'll do it automatically. That's got some great content content in there as well. So some really good resources to get you started. So to wrap up, remember about your experience layer. I've talked about how you build an agent and some of those agents, but actually it's how these things connect together and how your employees, the people using your agents, get to it and use it. So think about Copilot as your experience layer, whether you're using some of those different Copilots or not. Think about how you get to people there. Think about it could be Teams as your experience layer, but I loved that Satya's comment of Copilot is your UI for AI. So getting your systems all in one place through these existing canned Copilots, or building these connectors that can make sure your digital core at the bottom there can connect to people. There's no more having to know which system to go to for what. You can go into Copilot and ask that question, and it will bring the right agent to you. So think about how you connect to people, bring these agents into your familiar apps. These agents you can build will work. If you have M365 Copilot, they will work in Word, in PowerPoint, in all the different Office applications, and you can bring that to people where they are. And that's what really brings the value to other people. But thank you, those who've stuck around to this point. Have a very, very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, however you are celebrating. You are a fabulous individual. But don't forget to shut down that laptop. Have a break. Take that time away. Fantastic if you're listening to this during your break, but just let that mind drift away. Well, unless you want to listen to the Copilot connection a little bit as well, which will help you just keep these things buzzing around without overwhelming. But have a fantastic break, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in 2025. Thanks very much.